Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome to another edition of Man Cave Monday. I'm so excited to have you all to join me once again. I see you coming in the room, so go ahead and like the page, of course, but also hit that share button. Let somebody know Man Cave Monday is back. Thank y'all for continuing to support. I want your comments. I want your feedback. I have been just overwhelmed by y'all's response to this. So thank y'all for continuing to support. So this week, I am so pleased and privileged to have a great friend of mine to join me. Many of you know him, but it is quite possible that a few of y'all live up under a rock and don't know who this man is. But he is the senior pastor of the Riceville Mount Olive Baptist Church in the great city of Houston, Texas, one of my favorite U.S. cities. He is Dr. Calvin Jerome McFadden. How are you, sir?
Man, my friend and my brother, I am wonderful and even better now talking to you.
That's all right, man. You look well. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
So much to get into with you, but how are things? How are you?
Man, Pastor, let me tell you, first of all, thank you for your friendship, man, over the years. I count it an honor to call you my brother and my friend, and I'm so thankful for that. Yeah. But I would tell you, in the words of my father-in-law, my 84-year-old father-in-law in Lake City, Florida, Doc, he always says, man, I'm doing so good. If I get into bed, I'm going to need a twin. I mean, God has just has blessed me. My family and I are doing well and feeling good. We've been blessed even through this coronavirus epidemic or pandemic. Yeah. But the church is well, families well, children and wife have been adjusting very well to Houston. Yeah. And we're just blessed. You know, had a challenge just very recently, but the Lord has been faithful even in that.
Yes, sir. And we're going to get into all of that. This is Man Cave Monday, and you have been such a friend and such a brother. And I want to kind of give people the backstory. I'm sure you remember it, but I think about it quite often because, you know, seasons come around where you have to assess and evaluate your surroundings and your circle. And so I think about my friendships and those that have sustained over the years. So back in 2004, my wife and I and our 4-month-old son at that time transitioned from Atlanta to Tallahassee. And so, of course, we were working and serving at the Bethel Church under Dr. Holmes' leadership. So at the time, we didn't actually live in Tallahassee. We lived in Cairo, Georgia. So we're talking every day, getting up, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning to make it to Tallahassee on time for work or for church. So every Sunday morning, we would journey from Cairo to Tallahassee, which is about 45-minute drive or so. And on 319, we would pick up 96.1. And every Sunday morning, I think it was at 7 o'clock a.m., I would hear this voice. And he would always say at the end of his broadcast, faith honors God and God honors faith. And I was so impressed. And I don't get excited by preachers, you know what I mean? I ain't no personality kind of person, but I was so just enthralled with the content and the quality. The preaching grabbed me. It was exciting. It was empowering. And I'm like, yo, who is this? Like, I got to meet this cat. And sure enough, it was Dr. Calvin Jerome McFadden. At the time, you were the pastor of the Community of Faith Church in Tallahassee. And I had the privilege to finally meet you. And, sometimes they say you don't want to meet your heroes because you'd be sadly disappointed. But I was so, impressed with you even more so after meeting you because of just the profundity of your gift. And I never forget, and I wasn't but 25, 26 years old. You took me out to the Loop Pizza place on
Yes,
West
sir.
Tennessee Street. And ever since that day, you have been my friend and my brother. And I wanted to tell the world that story because it meant so much to me. And you ain't that much older than me now. I don't want folk to think Mac
That's
is,
it,
you know,
Doc.
66 years old or something, you know, but
That's
he
it.
embraced me, you know, from day one. And to hear him on the radio and to want to meet him so bad and then to finally meet him and for you to be so down to earth and friendly and inviting, that has meant the world to me, even these last 16 years, bro.
Doc, listen, man, you every time I hear you tell that story, it warms my heart so much because I think I'm the blessed person on this end of the stick. I remember that day vividly when we met and you came by and just what you said. You said, "Man, I just wanted to meet you," and I was so humbled and honored. I said, well, "Doc, come on, let's get to know each other." And then
Yeah.
we went and got something to eat, which is
Yeah.
always good to break
Always
bread
good.
together.
Yeah.
Uh, but I have to tell my side of the story of this too to those who are watching. Pastor was very faithful in his work at the Bethel Church in Tallahassee, and I was just enamored with his commitment of going back and forth from Cairo to Tallahassee. But then when the Lord called him to his assignment at Jacob Chapel, I was just so thankful for the gift that he brought to the body. And I'll never forget, I'd already, when I moved from Tallahassee to Warner Robins and then Warner Robins to Massachusetts, I started hearing more and more about Jacob Chapel and the work that Reverend Simmons was doing. And man, when you had me to come and do that revival the first time, I have been a champion and a bullhorn for Jacob Chapel even more since then. Because I told folks, and this got on the street, you can talk to some of my boys, my other boys. I said, man, listen, when I went to Preacher Simmons, he had Negroes in their 10 on a mule, Doc, during the week for revival. And Doc, I mean, the spirit, the energy was
Mm.
just so high and anointed.
Wow.
And I know that is attributed to your leadership. And so,
Wow.
Doc, I an amazement of your gift. And of course, when you came to Massachusetts, the folks they were like, "Who is that man?" And I said, "That's my brother." So I'm glad to know you love Houston. So we're gonna get you out here too,
Love
Doc.
it. Love it. And it was such a privilege. You know, you invited me to COF, you invited me to Springfield, and just for that exposure, for me to be able to share in the space where you had been called. And man, when you came to the chapel, and I don't want y'all to think we just here stroking each other's egos. This is genuine. Like this is my boy. And
Yeah,
when you came and blessed the chapel the first time, of course Tallahassee knows you, but you had grown such, you know, and it
man.
evolved such even from what we knew you to be. And I was like,
Yeah,
man, Mac is on something. You know, he is
yeah.
on to something. And you just blessed us. I'm like, all right, set up next year. Let's do it again. And my people demanded, you know, that you come. So I want to thank you, you know, for the years of friendship that you have given to me. This is Man Cave Monday. I'm with Dr. Calvin Jerome McFadden. He's the senior pastor of the Wrightsville Mount Olive Baptist Church in the great city of Houston, Texas. Now, let's talk about that because
Yeah,
we could talk transition. I mean, you were doing a great work in Springfield. You were growing. You were thriving. You had held political office of
yeah,
leadership there. But then one day the Lord decides to shift you yet
absolutely.
again to the city of Houston. Talk me through that.
Absolutely. You know, and I'm so grateful, and perhaps there may be some folks watching from St. John's and Springfield. I had a wonderful and fruitful ministry there for 10 years. Um, I always laugh. My father, my late father now, would always tell people when they'd ask him where his son was, he said, "Oh, he's up in Boston." And I said, "Dad, there are more cities in Massachusetts than
Than
Boston."
just Boston.
So we were in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is about 79, 80 miles west of Boston.
Actually, you flew me into Connecticut when
Yeah,
we got there,
that's
so
what
it's
so many
nowhere
people
near
are
Boston.
always confused about when I invite pastors to come in. They say, "Wait a minute now, my ticket says I'm flying into Windsor Locks or Hartford, Connecticut. I thought you in Massachusetts." I said, "Man, we're closer to Hartford than we are to Boston. It was just across the line.
Yeah.
And so we went there in 2010. And at that time, I was leaving a situation in Warner Robins, Georgia, where things just didn't quite work out. I had, if folks will recall, I had been in Tallahassee for 11 years, and then I was invited to come to a church in Warner Robins and to take over the ministry there after the pastor retired. But then things changed, and it became, fortunately, a volatile situation. So I needed to leave, and it was Dr. Carolyn Knight who recommended the St. John's Church to me and me to St. John's, and went there, man, and was just blown away by the ministry there. And after 3 years, we were able to build a new facility that they're in now. And I also ran for a countywide seat, or citywide seat rather, for the school board, and served a term there. And I enjoyed my time, and my family enjoyed our time in Springfield. But Doc, there were two things that just were issues for me. Number one, I'm a Southerner at heart, and Doc, as you know, it gets cold in Massachusetts. And, I mean, to the point, Doc, of several feet of snow, and we being stuck, down in Houston here, and in Florida, we worry about hurricanes. But in Massachusetts, you worry about snowstorms and nor'easters. And so, one of my prayers had always been, Doc, I said, Lord, I'll serve wherever you want me to serve, and I'll stay at St. John's as long as you want me to stay. But my heart's desire is to be somewhere back in the South and to be at a progressive ministry that hopefully I can serve until I retire. And Doc, I'm going to tell you, I've even shared with Riceville, my desire is not to pastor until I, can't talk and can't walk. I want to be able to pastor and then retire and enjoy the blessing of being able to come and hear you other pastors that might still be pastoring. I'm just going to go around the country and be blessed by all of your words. And so, Doc, I got here at 45, and I'm praying that, if the Lord says the same, that, he'll give me good 20 years here, 20, 25 years, and then I'm going to ride off into the sunset and enjoy time with the wife and children if the Lord says the same. So that's my long range plan.
Yeah. And see, you're a native Floridian, So
yes, sir.
The South, is where your heart is, and, your wife, Jamina, and Catherine and Jerome. We're going to talk about, your family at some point, but you all have seemed to settle down now in the Houston area, which is interesting because for the last 7 months, Reverend, we've been in a pandemic. So the majority of your pastorate has actually been virtual with a congregation that you have not really had a chance to be hands-on with. You got to talk to us about that.
Oh, man. Doc, my first Sunday was the first Sunday in February. And the last Sunday in the pulpit with folks in the congregation was the second Sunday in March. Third Sunday in March is when we started going virtual. And really, there was some work that we needed to do at Riceville to kind of get us on par for providing that virtual worship experience. And so, Doc, we thought we had time when I got there. We started planning, saying what we needed to do as far as equipment and broadband and all that kind of stuff. Well, Doc, as soon as I got there and the pandemic hit and things started shutting down, we were like, we got to do this quickly.
Ain't no motion in second and church meeting. How y'all feel about this? It's time to go.
I'm telling you, it was just, we got to get it done. And man, as you mentioned, the last 7 or 8 months now, it's been pastoring in the pandemic. And so what has been my challenge is trying to keep our church connected, not only for Sunday morning and Wednesday Bible study, but, even other opportunities. So we started creating things like, movie nights on Friday nights, and we shoot out a movie or a link to folks and say, please join us. And then I'll have like a little after movie discussion to talk about the movie. We've had fitness Thursdays where we've got some fitness folks in our church, and, they'll broadcast and folks can go along or watch it later. We've got somebody doing yoga now, just coming up with all these different types of things to really keep us engaged. And most recently, our church posted, this is Clergy Appreciation Month, and they posted something, and many of the people have commented, Pastor, they appreciate me trying to keep the church together.
Yeah.
And even though folks are anxious to get back to church, and God knows I am,
Hmm.
because Reverend, I don't know about you, but it ain't easy just preaching, to a camera to the five folk we might have.
Right. The praise team behind you. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Folks don't realize how challenging that is, but we tried to make the best of it and tried to create a worship experience that's very similar to in person, minus the fellowship.
Definitely. And for those that, haven't already connected, make sure y'all go on Facebook and connect with Riceville Mount Olive Church, because they broadcast every week, and all the sermons, all the teachings, all the worship is out there, and the content is out there. So y'all definitely need to connect. He's a preacher par excellent. But would you say that during this time, pandemic, and you having to pastor and preach through it, obviously it's devastating. The coronavirus is
Sure.
devastating. How
Yeah.
our current president is handling it is a complete disaster. But do you see where it has helped you as a preacher, as a leader? Do you see where this season we're in has helped develop you at all?
Pastor, let me tell you, I certainly have. I think that this is a true testament to for preachers to our preaching capacity, because and certainly not what is it, downgrading any of our colleagues, but I have some friends who have stated, oh man, I'm just gonna play all the oldies but goodies because I just can't preach to an empty room.
Mm,
And I'm saying to myself, but Doc, if you can't preach to an empty room, you can't preach, because the people still need to hear a word from the
a
Lord.
rhema
And
word, a relevant, fresh word.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and it moves us beyond this thing of, and God knows I'm guilty of it. Well, I touch your neighbor, I say to your neighbor, all the stuff that
Right.
I've used for fillers and all that kind of
Yeah. Me
stuff. But
too. Me too.
we use it for engagement. But you don't, who they're gonna touch. They sit in their house on their couch at their their count and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it really made me to be more intentional about what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, and making sure, as you mentioned, Paz, it's a relevant word. Folk don't want to hear when they didn't get some stimulus money, or it's looking like we won't get any stimulus money. They want to hear about how blessed they are, even though
Your
many folks
blessing
are
is on the
recognized.
way, and your house and your
Yeah,
car and all of
praises
that.
go up, blessings come down. These folk want to know, how am I going to make it? How do I hold on to my faith in
Yeah.
the midst of all of
Yeah.
you know
Make
uh
it make
what is
sense,
God up
Pastor.
to?
You know,
Yeah,
make this all of what I'm seeing, what I'm reading, what I'm feeling, what I'm losing, make it make sense for me. And
absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
God is revealing his true messengers. As you said, not to knock, not to downgrade or throw shade on anybody, but this is the season for the true messenger, for the true prophet.
Absolutely.
All them frills and stuff we used to get by with right now, and there's no more competition of who got the biggest building, who got the biggest. No,
Right.
none of that matter no more, because ain't nobody in the
Ain't
building.
nobody in them.
You know what I'm saying? So these
Yeah.
monstrosities, that we've built in the last 30 years, as far as buildings are concerned, I think God
Yeah.
is getting rid of all of that pretense, and
Man.
forcing us to examine who we are. Because even
Yeah.
after this is over, we don't know what church gonna look like.
Doc, you talking, man.
We don't know what the new dynamic is going to be, the new paradigm. Because I don't
Yeah.
think this is our new normal. I
That's
think
right.
whatever happens after this and what we
Yeah.
settle into is going to be, our new
Abs-
normal. So being able to
Absolutely.
watch you do it, being
Man.
the newly, elected pastor, still waiting to be installed and celebrated. Well, you've been installed,
Absolutely.
but you know what I mean. The whole celebration
Yeah.
that we were gonna come to
Yeah.
Houston and really heap on
That's
our,
right.
our appreciation to you. You've shown
Man.
us, and you are showing us, what real
Man.
leadership looks like in this season.
Pastor, but I appreciate that, man. And God knows, I think this has probably been um, the strongest test of my ministerial career.
I was gonna ask about that.
I think it really is because Doc, I'm gonna tell you, man, it really is a struggle not seeing. There are some of our colleagues, who um, don't really care for engagement with people, but you and I have the personality. We like to touch, we like to see, and and interact and engage with our
Yeah,
members. And so it's hard not being able to do that. And even visiting the sick, if
right.
people are in hospital,
Can't
you
go in
can't
there.
even do that.
Yeah,
And so all of the things that we do as pastors in ministry, we're just not able to do. And coming in, we're trying to get to know the people as much as we can. It's really been a challenge. But I
mm,
tell you, man, I've been trying my best to reach out, engage, and it's been work. I
yeah.
mean, I'm getting ready, Doc, to go. I started pastoring when I was 18. I'm getting ready to go into my 28th year now of pastoring. And Doc, um, there's many people on this side that, they would say, man, I don't work as hard, or, I'm not being as intentional as perhaps I used to be. Well, Doc, this has been the reverse. God knows I've been working.
I don't know what we was doing before, but now
Man, I'm telling you.
working harder than we ever had before.
Absolutely. And members, they're saying, well, oh, you just do the virtual service, you're not doing, but even getting that together and making sure all the moving parts are moving in the
Right.
right direction
We don't
is a
like to use
challenge.
this language, Mac, but we are executive producing Sunday mornings.
Absolutely. 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 Trying to put it all together. And thank God, man, we've built a good team at Riceville already. And they're really working to see what we can do to add value to the worship experience. And so we're going to be trying some new things over the course of the next couple of months, because the truth of the matter is, Doc, we're thinking that it probably won't be until the beginning of the year or even thereafter that we might return.
Yeah,
With the flu season coming upon us and all that stuff, we
yeah.
got to be very mindful.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I
Um,
have to tell you this,
yeah.
Pastor, real quick, man. I have some members, and if they're watching me, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I mean it with a joking heart, but with a serious mind. Some who want to return to the church and say, oh, well, we ought not let the government dictate what we do, and we ought not worry about that. And I said, well, we got to be wise in when we're exercising faith. And so
Yes.
one told me that they were going to another church around the corner. And, part of me wants to say now, when you get sick or if something happened to you, you make sure you call that pastor, because I don't want to put our people at risk
Man.
because you want to be sitting up in the sanctuary.
Wow. I'm trying to keep 45 towards the end of our conversation, but to watch the super spreader event that he had, over the weekend, that is the major reason why we
Yeah,
don't need to be unwise. He
absolutely.
is a testament to a lack of wisdom. He's the
Absolutely.
epitome of ignorance in this season,
Yes,
and
indeed.
we'll talk more about him in a minute. But
Yeah.
I'm not in a hurry
Yeah.
to bring God's people back into that space, because when they come, they coming, and
That's
they
right.
want to be
That's
able to interact and engage, and even with masks on. Like, I've gone to some funerals, because I've had
yeah.
to, and I've had to preach them,
Yeah.
and I'm just looking around like it's too many folk in here, you
I
know.
know that's
I'm like,
and
because
not abiding by the social distance guidelines.
yeah, yeah, it is what it is. But I'm looking around,
Yeah.
I'm like, we can't be in here too long.
Yeah.
So those programs that I've been in charge of, I've made sure we get in and get out, because we are
I know
still in
that's
a
right.
pandemic. um,
That's right.
and you know where we are right now in Tallahassee, college
Yeah.
town. And so,
Yeah.
them folk up there at your school, Florida State, ain't doing right. Students at the pool
Of
parties, and they
course.
still want to, gather at these apartment complexes. They ain't doing right. So as soon as the students came back, the numbers skyrocketed here
Yeah.
in Tallahassee, bro. So, we got to be wise, like you said.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I hear that President Thrasher over at FSU, didn't he have
He
COVID?
and his
His
wife
wife
both.
tested positive.
Yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
we pray for them, because he was on his
Yeah.
way out of office anyway. He told them he was done,
Yeah.
but he and his
Yeah.
wife both, and Bobby Bowden as well.
Really.
Yeah, and they are seasoned in age. So
Yeah.
we're certainly praying for their
This
health
thing
as
is
well.
serious, man. It
Yeah.
really is.
Now you mentioned something in the last comment that you made. You were 18
Yeah.
when you began the ministry. Now, when I was growing up, and this is a short version of a long story, my best friend growing up, his name was Jason Grimes. He now lives in the DMV area, but we grew up
Mm,
in Jersey together. We were both
mm,
16 years old, and the Lord had called him to preach. He didn't tell me, he didn't tell anybody. It was just him and my dad. Was kind of working, and one
yeah.
day he just told me that his
Yeah.
trial sermon was coming up. 16 years old. I was like, bro,
Yeah.
what is wrong with you? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Like we were
Mm-hmm.
just playing Super Nintendo together. Like we chasing girls. What are you doing? You're 16.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, 3 years later, at
Yes,
19
sir.
years old,
Yes,
Lord
sir.
called me, right? And still questioning to this day what the Lord want with me, right? But at
Amen, brother.
18 years old,
Yeah.
what gosh, what was going on? What did the Lord say? What was that experience like as an 18-year-old young man?
Well, look, let me tell you, Pastor, I actually was called at 15.
Wow.
And I remember going to my pastor because I had started, I think about 13 years old. I was going around the city of Tampa, just preaching or speaking rather at that time for youth days. I mean, I was like the youth day speaker
Yeah.
extraordinaire, so to speak. I mean, all
Yeah.
the churches were inviting me to
Yeah.
come. And the more and more I went, the more and more I started literally preaching, and I started feeling this tugging on the inside. And I went to my pastor and I said, I don't know what this means, but I feel that the Lord is calling me to preach. And I remember saying, but I don't want to,
I don't
because
want
Doc, I
to.
wanted to go and I wanted to be a lawyer and I wanted to make some money. And contrary to what people think,
In that
preachers
order.
don't make all the money. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So I wanted to go and have a luxurious lifestyle, so to speak.
Yeah.
But when I met with my pastor, they walked me through at that time, United Methodist Church had a pamphlet or a book called The Christian as Minister. And my pastor wanted me to understand that uh, every Christian is a minister.
Yeah.
But there are areas of ministry to which God calls us, pastoral ministry,
Yeah.
chaplaincy, things of that sort. And so when I walked through that process for a year, it was very clear to me at the end of that process that indeed the Lord was calling me toward pastoral ministry. Well, I
Mm.
didn't think, though, that it was going to come so quickly because after I had spent that year with my pastor, when I got to Bethune-Cookman, the college chaplain came to me one day, and Doc, I still believe to this day, I thought I heard him say, do you want to be a youth pastor at a United Methodist Church? And so, I'm a broke college student. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. I extra
Yeah.
money in the pocket. Well, Doc, in the United Methodist Church, they have what they call student pastors, who pastors, but they're students
Mm-hmm.
for a church that can't afford a full-time seminary trained pastor. Doc, I go over there, and I'll never forget. I had taken my grandmother with me. I go over there thinking, I'm being introduced as a little youth pastor, and I get there. The people sitting there waiting on me with the district superintendent for me to be introduced as their next pastor. And I had a Scooby Doo moment. I'm like, I'm like, what? Doc, I was 18.
Mm.
The retiring pastor was the reverse of my age. He was 81 years old and had been there
Whoa.
for 33 years.
Whoa.
And I had a good maybe 30 or 40 members. Most of them were old enough to be my grandparents or
I'm
great
sure.
grandparents. And it was that group. And then I had like 20 children. So, the middle ground or the middle ages were very rare.
Yeah.
But Doc, I'm going to tell you, those years were the best years of my ministry because those folks taught me how to pastor. I
Mm.
didn't pastor them; they
Yeah.
pastored me, and I
Yeah.
don't mean that in a derogatory
No,
way.
no, no, no.
They
Yeah.
really showed me what pastoring was all about,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I spent 2 years there, Doc, and been doing it ever since.
The rest is history. And see,
So this is really well, my third. I'm going into my 31st year of ministry and
yeah,
28th year pastoring.
yeah, because you was doing some preaching out there on the
Look,
circuit, the youth day circuit.
Now, I'm telling you,
out
man,
there
on that
killing the
UK
game.
circuit, it was the bomb. And I was getting my little $75 and
Yes,
my
sir.
$50. I
And a
thought I
chicken
was doing
plate.
it, bro.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Man,
With that
and see,
red church punch.
yes, sir. And cake to go with it. You dropping nuggets that I'm not even sure you realize. You
Yeah,
mentioned the process that you
yeah,
were going through with the United Methodist Church at that time, but there was an established process.
yeah,
What I lament the most about this age of preaching or preachers, um,
yeah,
and it's probably it's a disease that has grown, in the last 10, 15 years, especially with the advent of social media. But
yeah,
I lament the fact that there, number one, is no process in place for training preachers. Or
yeah.
if there is one, I lament the fact that a lot of preachers won't submit to it,
Mm,
to be trained, to be
yeah,
a Timothy to a Paul,
absolutely.
to be a Joshua to a Moses, or to be
Yeah,
up under somebody long enough to get correction and get your filter
yeah,
straight, get your doctrinal stand straight for
yeah,
that matter.
yeah,
I
yeah,
lament the fact that there either is no process or
yeah.
these days young preachers don't want to submit to it. Because you know me, I'm from the house of Cameron Alexander, you know,
Yes,
the
sir.
ultimate hazing slash training process, at the Antioch Church in Atlanta. So now I
Yeah,
look at this generation, I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. Like, get off my
yeah,
lawn, you young preachers. But I
yeah,
see it clear as day that don't nobody
yeah,
want to be under nobody. Everybody just want to be great on their own. What do you say about that dynamic?
yeah. Well, I would tell you, Pastor, that you're right on target with that. And I kind of saw this trend happening in the late 2000s, middle 2000s, late 2000s, where you had a bunch of people, and I'm not saying you got to necessarily go to seminary or theological training, but you need to sit under some covering and be trained by a senior statesman, one who has gone down the road that you're trying to go. And many people will step out there and you start seeing these guys starting churches and they've had no seminary or theological training or education period, and they've not sat under anybody, and they start growing these ministries, and we give validation to that. But what we started seeing was some people were saying, well, man, if they could go and do that and they haven't gone to college, they haven't got any training, they haven't sat under anybody, then maybe I can do that. And so now we start seeing a dumbing down, in my opinion,
Me too.
of ministry, of pastoring, of theological education, of training. And it shows often in our leadership, and it shows with the end result of what we have with our members.
Yeah.
And so I believe that every pastor, worth his or her salt, whatever you want, they need some kind of training. They need
Yeah.
some kind of internship, if you will. I
Right.
mean, Pastor Alexander, God rest his soul. I mean, he was, as you know, very well. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. He was indeed, a generation of preachers have come because of him, have been born
Because of
because of
him.
him.
Right. Right.
And one thing, two things I'll say. I tell the ministers, even at the Riceville Church, we've not been able to meet since everything has been going on. But, I think the first month I was here, I met with the ministers and I said, listen, we're going to be meeting regularly so that we can make sure when you stand up in that pulpit, you're not only representing yourself, you're representing God, you're representing Riceville, and you're representing me. So we want to make sure that you stand up there knowing what you're talking about, that you're ready and prepared,
Mm.
and that it's sound doctrine.
Sound
That's the
doctrine.
first thing. Yeah, absolutely. And then the second thing, Pastor, is and certainly not trying to ingratiate myself with you, but I remember years ago when you had me to come over with some ministers that had been sitting under your training, and my frat brother Gary Johnson was one of those at that time.
Yep.
So that shows you how long ago that was. But I was enamored by the fact, or impressed by the fact that you took them through some training, and even to the point of saying, when you stand up in the pulpit, this is how you look, this is what you say, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Because my college chaplain used to say, Bethune Cookman, we used to joke with him, Pastor, and we say, because he was very, United Methodist conservative, And we used to say for college programs, we said, Dr. Fair, man, if we get up there and we start hooping in the prayer or we start speaking in tongues, what you gonna do? And
Mm.
Dr. Fair always said, he said, go ahead, you can do it. He said, but I promise you, you'll never do it again.
That'll be your last time. See, that is the
We'll never
kind
do
of,
it
that's
again.
what's missing. That is what's missing
Yeah,
now. I mean, you
absolutely.
casually throw out the name, Carolyn Knight. She was one of your
Yeah.
teachers, professors,
Yes, sir.
right? Jackie Grant. I sat up
Yeah.
under her sister, Deborah Grant. I was Debbie
Yeah.
Grant's musician when I was at Morris Brown. I
Wow.
wasn't even preaching yet, but
I didn't
Pastor
know that. You
Debbie.
know, Debbie and I went to seminary together.
See, so these are people who
Wow.
help with our spiritual formation.
Yeah.
These were men and women who poured into us, who we submitted ourselves to,
Yeah.
in those seasons. And to this
Yeah.
day, I can call Pastor Debbie. To this day, of
Yeah.
course, I have my dad and my uncle and, other
Yeah.
influences, and even yourself
Yeah.
as an influence, a big brother to me.
Yeah.
But I think
Man.
we are so busy chasing clout, you know,
Mhm.
and chasing the following and the numbers and
Yeah.
the views in this season.
Yeah.
We lose sight, of what this thing is really all about. So
Absolutely.
for you to talk about that process
Yeah.
that you went through and are still somewhat, going through in terms of
Yeah.
accountability. You mentioned seminary training, and I'm gonna just go ahead and say this. Just is what it is. Um, Preachers are the only folk I know who get to practice with no training or accountability. All they got to do is
Lord
say,
have
"The
mercy.
Lord called me." You can't
Yeah.
fly no
Yeah.
airplane talking about the Lord
Lord have,
called me. You can't
that's
even
right.
cut hair legally
That's right.
talking about the Lord called me. But yet,
That's right.
preachers, somehow we can just take a platform and don't feel the need to get training, to get
Yeah.
that doctrinal and that seminary, and I'm not just saying that because I've been to seminary and I'm in seminary, but it's the
Yeah.
fact that you sharpen your tools. And
Absolutely.
it's dangerous if the word of God is a two-edged sword and you're supposed to be doing surgery. Well, everybody can't have the scalpel, you know?
Man.
We out here
You're
doing
right now.
surgery with no training, dog, and it's a wonder that the body of Christ is bleeding to death.
That's right.
Just my
That's right.
thoughts, I ain't throwing shade,
No,
but if
man.
I can pay
Listen,
$500 to some dude in Jacksonville to get a doctorate, something ain't right.
don't you stop.
S-
Don't you stop. But you own it, brother. And
Something ain't
I'm
right.
gonna tell you, man, that's what we're seeing now. And when I was working on my doctorate at FSU, my college professor, Dr. Ann Mullers, graduate professor, she would say, we were talking about how I was in family and child studies, and she made a comment one day. She said, it's interesting. You got to have a license to fish. You got to have a license to have a gun. And went down the list, and she said, but you don't have to have a license to parent. And as a result, we see so many children who are abused and or become orphaned because the people who birthed them had no personal experience and that no level of training, no qualifications that they had to work through in order to become a parent.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in class that day saying to myself, well, you know what, ministry too is also one of those things because you don't necessarily have to be licensed to do that. But then you give birth to something and you leave it orphaned or you don't take care of it because you've not gotten the necessary training and education that you need
Tragic.
to care for the gift that's been entrusted to you. And I see that, man, so often, and it's a sin and a shame. And Doc, a lot of our colleagues too, we know have been, their mainstay has been on the road. And while I'm grateful, the Lord blesses me to go and do revivals and preachers just as He does with you, Pastor. But uh, I talked to Jeffrey Johnson in Indianapolis a few years ago, and Doc, I'm going to tell you, he's in that group, with Jeff Johnson, Maurice Watson, Freddie Haynes, and
Right.
Ralph West, right? And many times we have often heard of, Maurice Watson, Ralph West, and Freddie Haynes. And a lot of people never really heard,
Of Jeffrey
you
Johnson.
don't hear much on the road of Jeff Johnson.
Yeah.
And I recall when I had him visit me in Springfield, I asked him about that. And he said, Doc, at one point in his ministry, because Doc, I mean, if you've never been, that brother's got mega major ministry in Indianapolis. I mean, he got 3 locations, and every last one of them are mega church, mega facilities. But he said to me, he said, at one point I used to be jealous and envious of Mo and Freddie and Ralph, because they were always preaching and always going other places. And he said, I didn't get that invitation. He said, and then the Lord had to reveal to me that my ministry was staying here at my church and
Pastor.
building what he's given me to pastor these people. And as a result, this is what we have.
Wow.
And Doc, his ministry can stand toe to toe to any other ministry in the United States of America. I believe that with all of my heart.
Yeah.
And so, Doc, I hope that whoever is watching, a pastor or whomever, I hope that what Pastor Simmons and I are sharing with you is that you be faithful in what the Lord has given to you, wherever you're planted.
Yeah.
Try to grow there, do the best you can while you're there.
Yeah.
But know that if you're a pastor, your greatest ministry is not going to be on the evangelistic circuit.
Mm.
Your greatest ministry is going to be at the place God has stationed you.
Reverend, Reverend, I'm writing stuff down because I don't want to forget. You just given me so much. I had the privilege of meeting Jeffrey Johnson one time, up close. I've seen him at IC3, but I met him. He was doing a conference in Louisiana, and I happened to be invited by one of my buddies there, so I just came to check it out, and had never heard of him, had never heard him, and just he was performing therapy, surgery, that he was talking about the men and us as, preachers and his men. I mean, it was therapeutic. And I had to come up
Man,
to him, not on no clout chase, but I just had to come up to him. I think I might have tried to walk that man to his room. Like, I followed him out of the hall up to the elevator. I'm like, Reverend, I don't want nothing from you. I just want to
yeah,
thank you, for
yeah,
that. And so I know exactly what you mean when you
yeah,
talk about that pastoring piece. I was in a space, and I'm two stories gonna end up merging. I was in a space where, when I was growing tremendously, and the growth,
yeah,
from 2006, up into
yeah,
the 2000 teens,
yeah. Absolutely.
Jacob Chapel was just exploding. I'm getting pulled
Yeah,
here and there and invited, here and there. But one thing I always, well, no, not always. One thing I learned to be grateful for was that sometimes I didn't get an invitation
yeah,
because my son was only 2 years old, 5 years
yeah,
old, 7 years old, 12 years old. I've never missed a basketball game,
yeah,
very rarely. I didn't miss
yeah,
many of his band performances. I
yeah.
didn't miss any of the flag football, whatever else was going on, award ceremonies, parent teacher conferences. I
Absolutely.
was present for those
Yeah,
things. And now I realize the Lord kept me off the road, um,
absolutely.
because He
Absolutely.
knew what was most, because He knew I was going to take every invitation. I was going.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna say
Absolutely.
yes because I like, we love to preach, right? We'll preach every
Yeah.
day. We would have
Yes,
that
sir.
kind of schedule if we had it our way. But for
Absolutely.
me, the Lord tempered some of that,
Yeah.
and He even um, used a very tough experience in my life. I'm talking about 2017. He used that to
Yeah.
refocus,
Yeah.
my perspective, because
Yeah.
again, I was on that track, you know. I
Absolutely.
was on that track to
Absolutely.
being gone every week.
Absolutely.
Not only was
Yeah.
Jacob Chapel not gonna see me much, but the lady
Yeah.
down the hall and the young fella down the
Yeah.
hall here wasn't gonna see me
Yeah.
much either.
Yeah.
And the Lord was like, I know you think this is punishment. I know you think this is the worst part of your life right now, but it's actually gonna be a blessing because
Yeah.
it took me back home and
Yeah.
focusing, on the home ministry. And I say that in your context because I watch you with Jerome and
Man.
Catherine, my
Man.
niece and nephew. I watch you with them, and daddy's not a stranger to them.
Yeah.
We're going to segue to your dad in a minute. That's where all of this is going. But
Yeah.
I
Got
watch
you.
you
I got you.
with Catherine and
Yeah.
Jerome. I watch you
Yeah.
with Jamina for that matter. And you're not a stranger to them. And
Yeah.
that's not by accident.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, my father, passed away earlier this September the 17th. And I would tell you, Doc, it was a shock to our family. He had fallen ill Labor Day weekend and subsequently passed away. And man, the reason, and God knows I'm still saddened by that. And I was telling someone even this morning that it's still unreal to me. I still can't believe that he's gone. But Doc, the thing that gives me hope and joy is that I had a good daddy. I mean, and I don't mind saying as a man, I had a good daddy.
Yeah.
And he was my man. And when people are not home or they're out in the streets and doing all kinds of things, not taking care of their families as men, I'm not used to that because my dad
Yeah.
uh, was a man. He took
Mine
care of his
too.
family. He
Yeah.
took his responsibilities. He did what he needed to do, and he instilled that in my brother, sister, and me. And we're not afraid to work. Reverend, people ask me sometimes. They say, "Are you a Jamaican because you have two or three jobs?" I said, "Well, I may have some Jamaican in me, but I know I got Joe McFadden in me, and my daddy
That's right.
didn't
That's right.
working." And so the same thing that I saw in my dad, my sister and brother were both athletic in volleyball and baseball and all of that. When I was for a year or two, when I was on the track team, my dad, trained me in that. He was there. I mean, and that gave him joy as well. And so I remember my wife asked me when, prior to us having children, we were married 10 years before the Lord blessed us with Catherine. And and I was, busy in ministry then. And I remember Jamina asking me when she was carrying Catherine, she said, "Are you going to be around when Catherine is
Mm,
born?" And Doc, that thing just like struck a chord with me. And I'm like, yes. And I have tried my best to be very true to that. Catherine, she's a dancer, and every recital, I'm there.
yeah.
And to the point where I'm embarrassing her because I'm like, that's my baby.
You are that dad.
And taking them, yeah, Doc, taking them to dance, taking her to dance practice. My son was in taekwondo and then basketball. And Doc, I can count on one hand, not even a full hand, the
Right.
times that I've not been there for a game because I don't ever want my children to grow up uh, hating the fact that their dad was in ministry so much that he no longer didn't have the time to spend with them. And so,
Mm,
Doc, my greatest joy is being at home with them and seeing them grow up. And my son, he came and jumped into bed with my wife and me last night prior to going to bed. And my wife was like, "Get out of the bed, boy. Go and get in your own bed." And I enjoy that kind of stuff because I know there's going to come a time that they
right.
ain't gonna want to be bothered with us.
Yeah. That is so true. That is so
I'm
true.
telling you, man. So we enjoy time together, and I want my children to be able to say the dad was serious about work and about ministry, but he took care of home, he took care of his wife, and he took care of us as children.
Yeah.
I don't give them everything that they want, but I want them to know that everything I have
They
is
have
there.
you, and I think
Absolutely,
that's the most important thing because we
absolutely,
know the stories. Preachers'
yeah,
families are no different than any other family, but I
absolutely,
think sometimes preachers' families can suffer more because we have
yeah,
to juggle somehow this public persona of who people
hmm,
think we are, and then you be
yeah.
like the green leaves behind closed doors,
I
you know, like Empire or
know
something,
that.
and that's
Yeah,
not good either. So to have a
yeah,
genuine, not put on, no pretense,
yeah,
relationship, I've seen that
yeah,
in the
yeah.
McFadden household, and so
Mhm.
that's
To
the
God be the
honor, and
glory.
I know that it comes from Mr. Joe, and your
Yeah,
relationship with him. And
absolutely.
I'm sure it still stings. You're only a month removed from his transition and not having any preparation,
Yeah.
emotional or otherwise, for it.
Yeah.
So, for the people who have lost loved ones in this season, for those that have loved ones that are sick, to those that have lost jobs, to those that have had their whole life and economy and health shift on them in
Yeah.
this latest season, make it make sense for them, Mac. Um,
Yeah.
what
You know,
perspective can you give? Because we tend to be over spiritual about things.
yeah.
I hate when I go
Yeah.
to funerals and folk be telling folk don't
Yeah.
cry. I hate that
Oh,
with a
don't get
passion.
me started on that.
If your
Yeah.
dog died, you gonna cry. So how
Absolutely.
dare you tell a family
Absolutely.
don't cry? But
Yeah.
Pastor, make it make sense. All of what
Yeah.
people are going through right
I would tell you that one of the things that I shared in my dad, I was very blessed to be able to preach his eulogy, and one of the things that I shared with our family and friends who were there, and even the folks that were able to watch by way of live stream, is even as the pastor, I've had some questions for God. I had some questions for God. Where my dad, Doc, I was born when my dad was only 18 years old. He was 64 when he passed,
now.
and relatively healthy. My dad had never spent a day in his life in the hospital until he went Labor Day weekend. Never, for nothing.
Wow.
Was my at one point used to be semi-pro, a semi-professional bodybuilder. I mean, that's what he did,
Mm.
um, and so was always, healthy. And to see how this happened just blew my mind. And one of the things that I said in the eulogy was, God, I had a question for you. How could this cat who occupies the highest office in the land, who promotes sexism, who espouses racism, who tears up the English language, and other litany of things,
Yes.
who's 74 years old, just 10 years older than my dad, how could he keep living?
Mm.
And my dad was not a saint, but was a good man,
Mm.
um, die at such a young age. God, how could all of this? I mean, and I was angry for a
Yeah.
moment because we prayed when my dad went in the hospital, and we just knew. I mean, we had people praying all across the country, and you were even one of the ones that reached out to me and said, Matt, we're praying for you and your dad. And we just knew that he was going to bounce back. And when the Lord called him home, it stung. And for a moment, I had my moment. And I think that's the first thing that I would say to people. It's all right to have your moment. I mean, that's your mama, that's your
Feel what
daddy,
you
that's your
feel.
child. Absolutely. You got to grieve. And see, we've become so spiritual that we want to tell people, oh, like you say, Pastor, don't cry. But that's when people lose their minds. They lose their emotional equilibrium because they're trying to put on this facade that
Mm.
they can't grieve and be human.
Yes.
And so I had to go through a grieving process, and I think still going through a grieving process because it doesn't happen this quickly that you get over this.
Right.
But I will say that it has been my faith in God that has kept me my hope and my faith alive. Um, there was a pastor in Atlanta years ago who had lost his wife and his child in a tragic accident, and he recalls saying that someone sent him a letter and said, Pastor, are you not going to give up on God and give up on your faith in God? And his reply was, why would I give up the very thing that's holding me together?
God Almighty.
Even in this, I'm
Yeah.
like, I ain't giving up on God because that's what's holding me together.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what has to be for you, my brother. That's what it has to be for you, my sister. It cannot be we only have faith in God when things are going the way we want them to go, or when things are going well, or when we don't have any tragedy. It is when we have those moments where we've got to hold on to the faith that we say we have, because that's going to be the only thing that's
Only
going to
thing.
get you through.
Wow. Wow. I heard I watched um Timothy Fleming back in the
Mhm.
90s
Yeah,
eulogize his son, Arik.
yeah,
He
yeah,
was his planned successor. That was his
yeah,
son, spitting
yeah,
image of him, voice and mannerisms and everything. Arik got
yeah.
killed by a drunk driver there up there in Atlanta. And of course, the eulogy is on YouTube. And he said, I
Yeah,
questioned God about
yeah,
why he would take Arik from me, his mother and I. Why would he take my son from me? And he said, Fleming said, God said to me, now you know how I felt.
my Lord. Yes, sir.
He who spared
Yes,
not
sir.
his only son, you know,
Yeah.
but let his son be crucified on a cross. Fleming said, God told me, now you know how I felt. Good
My
God
Lord.
Almighty. You know,
My Lord.
those scriptures become more
Yeah.
than just scriptures. Weeping may
Yes,
endure
sir.
for a night, or the entire book of Lamentations, or any of those other things that we
Yes.
encourage ourselves with. it literally becomes
Yeah.
food for our souls and comfort. He is
Absolutely.
the God of all comfort in that moment,
Yeah.
and we draw closer
Yeah.
to Him, I believe, uh,
Yes, sir.
because of that.
Absolutely, man. And I will tell you, even even my children, as a result of everything that we've experienced over this last month, I've seen even greater growth in them with their walk with God. And even to see how they have handled my, because they were very close to my father, their G Papa.
Yeah,
They're very close to him, and to see how they've handled this, and even their trust and faith in God at a young age has been really gratifying for me. And so
yeah.
I'm just so thankful, man. I can't thank God enough.
Wow. Well, you have your example of coming out, of this and still going through this valley. I'm not sure we ever completely get over
Yeah,
these losses, but to see your resolve, to
man.
see your passion for preaching and pastoring and leading through all of this, that people don't really understand the weight that's on the man of God's shoulder these days. Having
Yeah.
to encourage others while you yourself need
Mhm.
encouraging, and we lack
Absolutely.
balance at times. We don't really take care of ourselves
Yeah.
is as much as we should. We don't recreate as much as
Yeah.
we should. We don't detach
Yeah.
like we should. So to see you leading by example in that vein, and it is really an encouragement to all of
Man,
us,
I
and
thank you
and
for
we
that. I
appreciate
needed to
that.
hear that. Thank you, I appreciate that, Pastor.
Dr. McFadden, I hate to sully this conversation with talks of 45, but uh, make it make sense. I love following you on Facebook. I love reading your anecdotes to what is going on with this current administration, but you are
Mm.
unapologetic in your assertions towards this current administration. Make it
Oh,
make sense, Doc.
brother, let me tell you something. My wife said to me a while back, she said, I don't know if you'll ever get another job the way you talk about this man, because if they look at your Facebook posts, Doc,
Ooh-wee.
and I'm at an age now and at a period where I really don't care. It's this this man is the epitome of evil, and I would tell you, Doc, when he got elected, everybody, I think, certainly on Facebook and my family knew how I felt. I was a delegate to the 2016 convention, and I was a delegate for Hillary Clinton.
Mm,
And I felt uneasy when we left the convention because there was still that tension between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. And he had a number of supporters that were at the convention who, they weren't giving up until the bitter end. And so I wasn't sure we had it in the bag then. But Doc, I just knew once it was determined that Donald Trump was their nominee, the Republicans' nominee, that we were going to win this thing. And Doc, when I woke up, because I'd fallen asleep, and when I woke up and saw that he had won, I woke up about 2 o'clock that morning and saw he had won. I was devastated. And I was like, what is this foolishness? But then I said, let me give the man a try. Let me just see what he's going to do without, prejudging him. And Doc, even trying to give him a chance, he has proven himself to lack empathy,
yeah.
to lack intelligence, to lack the ability to care for another human being, including some of his family,
Right.
and he's just downright racist. And anybody who thinks otherwise, I think they're living in the vacuum, or the head is buried in the sand.
Wow.
And so, as we get ready to face this new election, I'm praying that God's will be done first of all, because I do support Scripture that I believe God raises up whom He will and He brings down whom He will. So I believe that Trump is there because it's a part of God's plan and God's will.
His permissive
But
will.
I'm
That's what I'm
praying.
gonna call it.
Yeah, absolutely, that's
I don't
right.
know if it's good and perfect will or not, Reverend, but it's
I
permissive.
know that's right. I know that's right. And so I'm hoping that we'll vote um, to remove him from office, because I think that the integrity of of the office and the integrity of our leader is at stake. Because this, if we have to live with 4 more years of Trump, I just don't know what we'll end up becoming. Because and what surprises me, and I told you this morning, I look at CNN every morning. I know I shouldn't, but what surprises me is that so many people still support this cat,
Yeah.
which lets me know that some people will choose economics over the caring ability of a government. As long as I'm getting my little $2,000 stimulus check or extra tax benefit, then I'm doing well without my care for my fellow man. And Doc, I just don't believe that God wants us to operate like that. Not in government, and certainly not in ministry. And so
Agreed.
I'm doing everything I can to get him out of there. Now, folks will also say, well, Biden is no better. Well, that's when we trust that he's better than Trump. And then when he gets in office, it's our job to hold his feet to the fire,
Mm.
to make sure that everything that he promised in the election that we helped to get him elected, he's going to fulfill
Yeah.
to the best of his ability.
Agreed.
And so, I just think, and then, Doc, I got to say this. My Lakers won last night. Praise the Lord.
Hallelujah. Congratulations to y'all. I'm a
But
I'm a
Doc,
Doc Rivers fan, so I've been a Boston Celtics fan. I went to the
oh, bless
playoffs in 2013 when they were fighting Boston down there
you,
in
man.
Miami. And I was with my
Listen,
Rondo jersey on back then and almost got put out of the American Airlines Arena. That's how
man,
diehard
you
Doc
can
Rivers
have
I am.
that.
Followed Doc to the
I do love
Clippers.
Doc Rivers. Now, I will tell you that.
Followed Doc to
But
the
Doc,
Clippers. Broke my heart
listen,
this year. Then
can you
I
believe
guess
they
I got
did
to be
that?
a Sixers fan now. I don't know. I'm still praying about it. I'm
Man,
looking for a team. We'll see. I can be
we'll see what
influenced.
happens. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But Doc, did you see where Shaquille O'Neal said that he had never voted?
Yeah. Him and Snoop and others. Yeah. Yeah. Ridiculous.
First of
Ice
all,
Cube.
my
Yeah.
grandmother used to say when we say stuff, she said, "Nah, I never tell nobody that. I wouldn't even let nobody know that." Because I mean, I would be embarrassed
Yeah.
to even say that. But Doc, some of these celebrities and professional players, and not all of them, but many come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and then they all of a sudden come into this money and this resource, and they have no affinity to the struggle that our ancestors had to get us to the right and responsibility to vote.
Right.
And I think we have a number of them who just have not taken this seriously.
Yeah.
And 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 to me, in some respects, they're no better than Trump,
Mm.
because
Agreed.
if you are rich and you have your money, but you don't care about the plight of your people,
Right.
then that's you're no better than
Well,
Trump.
Doc, you right on it. I agree 1,000%. No need to do no disclaimers on the man cave. I agree with everything this brother's saying right now. No chaser. I think it's the difference between the Negro and the African American.
Mm,
When we were Negroes, we were
mhm.
all in the same boat. You
Yeah,
know, none of us had the right to vote. None of us had the right to live and to exist and be. But when we
absolutely.
became African Americans
Yeah,
and we started living where they live, work where they
yeah,
work, eat where they eat, sit wherever we want
yeah,
to in the movie theater and or the
yeah,
bus, for that matter, own the bus company, we thought
yeah.
we had made it. And
Absolutely. We've
now the
arrived.
rest of you Negroes need to pull up your own bootstraps and do
Man.
what I did to make it.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
is the dis-ease that continues. I believe it's
yeah,
pervasive in the African American
yeah,
community because we really do think we've arrived, and we've bought
yeah.
into this notion that we live in a post-racial society, which is the furthest thing from the truth right now.
Absolutely.
Secondly, I believe that we have to address racism
Mhm.
differently than we address the racist.
Yeah,
I think you're gonna have the ist forever. You know, the
Yeah.
racist, you're gonna have them forever. Ain't nothing you can do to change their heart. But racism talks
Yeah.
about the systemic and
That's right.
systematic things that are in place. You know,
That's right.
that's what we mean when we talk about policing and fair jury pools and the
That's
disproportionate,
right.
rates that we're being locked up. We're talking about
That's
a
right.
system that
Yes.
fundamentally believes that
Yeah.
black folk are less than. You know,
Absolutely.
that's why we saying Black Lives Matter, because we don't seem to matter as much. You can't tell me
Absolutely.
all lives matter. You know, when Black
Absolutely.
lives don't seem to matter as much, we're still fighting to become that second portion of the 3/5 that they keep
Yeah.
taking from us. We ain't got our 2/5
Mhm.
yet to be
Yep.
acknowledged as equal to the white
That's
man.
right.
What do you
That's right.
think about it? It's, in my mind, it's systemic. I don't care if you don't like me, you a white man, you
Absolutely.
don't like me. That's fine. I ain't got to deal with you. But if you own a
Yeah.
business that you expect
Yeah.
me to patronize, or if
Yeah.
you are in control of something that's going to affect my child's education, or you
Yeah.
make laws, or you police, at that point, what you think about me does matter. And it becomes
Absolutely.
systemic at that point because now your ist
Absolutely.
has spilled over into the ism.
And Doc, what you just said is a clip that we need to splice and send to Attorney General Barr, because that man sat on Wolf Blitzer's show on CNN, and when he was asked if he believes there's systemic racism in America, he said no.
No.
And I shouted at the TV and I said, "How would you even know
How would you
that
know?
there's systemic racism? Because you never,
Never.
as a white man, a white male, ever had to deal with any form of racism or any form of discrimination. And for you even to say that there's no systemic racism shows your privilege and
Exactly.
your lack of
Exactly.
understanding.
Exactly.
Because everything that you just named, in the form of business, in the form of education, everything that we have to do, we got to interact with white folks. And if you feel about me a certain kind of way, systemically and historically,
Yeah.
I'm going to be affected by that.
Absolutely.
And I don't care, if out of 20 white people, you got 15 who are like, we're with you, we're Black Lives Matter, all that. You still got 5 who feel like we are inferior.
And they own the
And
banks, and they control
absolutely,
your mortgage
absolutely,
rates, and they control
absolutely,
your child's entrance into, school or not. They make
absolutely,
tax laws. That's where them 5 have more power than the 20 that
absolutely.
support you.
And Don, I'm going to tell you, when Donald Trump won the election in 2016, I'm afraid I can't remember the name of the author, but she spoke at University of Massachusetts a
Hmm.
couple of years ago, and she said what we saw in 2016 was, and this was a white woman saying this. She said, white America, especially white males, knew that this was their last resort or last way to hold on to their whiteness. In other words, they were like, we got to get Trump in there because we know that he's an idiot. I mean, they've even expressed that. Even
Yeah.
some of these so-called conservative evangelicals, they know that man lacks basic intelligence, but they knew that they could use him to get their agenda across. And part of that was not necessarily about abortion. It ain't necessarily about gun control. It ain't necessarily about some of this other. It's about protecting their heritage and their whiteness.
Yep.
And that's
Yep.
the bottom line. And
Bottom line.
and until we get to the point where we're able to pool some of our resources, which I don't know we'll ever be able to do that, and to create generational wealth, Doc, I don't know how we're going to get any better.
Yeah. Because there is an economic piece to it, that cannot be denied. It's not enough for you to
Absolutely.
just say, "All right, black man, you're equal to me now. All right, can we
Yeah.
be friends?" No, it's systemic, it's economic, it's financial.
Absolutely.
We are
Absolutely.
playing this game from 100 points behind, you know,
Absolutely.
and still
Absolutely.
trying to make ground. So don't tell me that the election of Obama is enough. Don't tell me that the King holiday, is enough. Don't tell me, because they still use the language of they let us, you know,
Yeah.
we let y'all
Yeah.
have a black president. We
Absolutely.
voted, you know, for Obama to get no.
Yeah.
Unless Obama's presidency brought about reparations, you know, we
Listen,
can't
and
say
I'm
it
still
was
waiting
free.
on that check.
Still waiting on that check. You know, like Dr. King said, America, and this is a whole nother subject. America has written a check
Yeah.
to the black man, and it has been
Yeah.
returned insufficient funds. You know,
Insufficient funds.
they want to use a certain version of King. You know, the
Yeah.
'63 March on Washington version of King, and even those words they misconstrue about that whole, you know, what the content of your character versus the color of your skin. But the
Yeah.
'66 through
Yeah.
'68 King, you know, who would start talking about that money,
Yeah.
that's what got him killed.
Yes, sir.
That's what got
That's
the
right.
bottom
That's right.
fourth of his face blown off in Memphis. He started talking about
That's
that
right.
money.
That's right. That's right. Because Doc, they want to hold to them historically, money is power.
Money is
And
power.
they're going to hold on to it as tightly. Doc, you think about, and I'm going to move on. You think about when you look at the what do you call it, net worth of black Congress people versus white Congress people. Doc, ain't nowhere in the world you can tell me that a white a person in Congress, their net worth is $5 million, and the same black person got a net worth of $600,000, and they're in the same position. I mean,
Right.
Doc, it's just
Right.
so
Because
intertwined
they
that we don't
came
even
from
know some of the
privilege.
deeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doc. I'm just like, bro. I mean, and that's why I say all the time. I tell my wife, I said, you know, because she's always laughing at me because I'm trying, Doc. You know, I don't try all these get rich quick schemes, but Doc, I work for what I want and what I get. But Doc, I'm always looking for a business opportunity, looking for something to invest in.
Yeah.
Because Doc, I first of all, and you know, I probably shouldn't say this because I know I have members who may watch this, but I'm not going to be dependent on the church solely for all of my income.
No.
I want to have different streams of revenue. I want to have businesses or something that I can pass down to my children
Yeah.
and it become generational wealth. So
Correct.
that's what I'm working,
Correct.
because that's what they do often when we're asleep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Their children are making money while they sleep. You know,
Absolutely.
and the blessing I think is to sort of put a cap on this portion is that God has gifted you so to where
Yeah.
your writing, your intellect is going to open so many other doors for you, and it won't diminish your role at Wrightsville or my role at Jacob Chapel, but it is the fact
Yeah.
that God has given us so many layers to where
Yeah.
we ain't gonna have to pastor for
Yeah.
no income, because that's not why
Yeah.
we do it in the first place. You know,
Exactly. You're right
we've
about
gone
that.
into situations where folk couldn't afford to pay us what we were worth, but we did it because
Yeah.
we love the Lord and we know we've been called.
That's
But I
right.
think we're moving towards a season where God is going to open doors based on the gifts that
Absolutely.
He invested in us that will also
Absolutely.
feed us, you know, and will
Yes,
also
that's
provide
right.
for our families. Because I can't read the
That's right.
Bible and not read the promise that God wants my children's children to be blessed. I ain't
That's right.
apologizing for that.
That's, that's right. Absolutely. That's one thing my father-in-law always says. He said he jokes with Jamina and me and her brother. He'll say, "Now, you know, I'm not leaving no money to y'all." He said, "But the Bible says to my children's children." He said, "I'm leaving it to my
Oh,
grand."
and that's a hard one because my daddy got some money. You know, 50 years
Absolutely.
from now, if the Lord called him home, you know, I would have loved to have gotten a little something.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
man, that the Bible
Yeah,
is
bro.
very specific on that. You're right. You're
Absolutely.
right.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, Mac, this has been a privilege to have you in the man cave, and I know the people have been blessed by it. I can't believe how fast an hour plus goes by in times like this, but we are continuously praying for you in this season, and you are an inspiration. You are my boy. I'm
Man.
grateful
Always.
to have you in my life. You already know you coming back to Tallahassee as soon as. the time and space allow. I don't even need a reason, but it's probably gonna be anniversary or revival or something. Because we
You say
got
the
to
word
have
I'm
you.
there.
My people want to hear from you, if not once a year, but not more. They gotta hear from you because you are a voice to generations. And so thank you for this time.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would just like to share or put out here in the space before we wrap?
Pastor, let me say, man, and I want Jacob Chapel to hear me. And I said every year that I come, I want them to know the gem of a gift that they have in you. I thank
Wow.
God for your giftedness. I thank God for your wife. I mean, listen, Jacob Chapel, that's a smart woman, and you thank God for First Lady, and I'm just
Yeah.
so thankful for the son and how he's coming up. And I want to appreciate you, show appreciation for just this opportunity to share. Man, this has been refreshing for me, and I dare say even a part of the grieving process of just being able to just sit and talk and chill. And so
Yes.
I am grateful for this release today,
Amen.
and so looking forward to coming back to Jacob Chapel. And
Yeah.
rest assured,
Yeah.
you're going to be coming this way as well, brother.
My God. My God. Well,
Good luck.
man, thank you so much. Folks, this has been another edition of Man Cave Monday. Please share this experience with somebody. So many nuggets, so much wisdom was imparted to us this week. So share this with your network. Let somebody know that Man Cave Monday is out here. We'll see you again next Monday. Whenever you pick this up, wherever you are at the moment, I hope that you're being strengthened by this experience. I appreciate y'all's continued support of this effort, and we'll have another guest on next week. So again, Dr. Calvin Jerome McFadden, thank you so much, sir. We are honored.
Wonderful.
Yes, sir. Forever. Shouts out to the big homie Chadwick up in heaven. Yeah, man. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you so much, man. And
Thank
we
you,
will
brother.
look to talk to you all very, very, very soon. You all take care.
God bless.